friends. Welcome to Alternative Future. I'm your host, Conway, and today we are going to be talking to my fellow contributor at Young Voices, Sarah Montalbano. Sarah is the Research Associate at Alaska Policy Forum, and her work has appeared in the Anchorage Daily News, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Examiner. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's great to have you here. So let's jump right in. Are the problems with our education system because we have cut funding for our education?
Ultimately, I believe students and schools have enough money. It simply isn't being allocated effectively to instruction. And one way we can test that informally is to examine if outcomes like standardized test results, graduation rates, even post-graduation salaries are positively correlated with higher spending per pupil. And what we see is that outcomes don't reliably track per pupil spending. States with higher per pupil spending often aren't seeing the highest test scores. Another statistic we can look at here is that inflation-adjusted K-12 education spending per student has increased 280% since 1960, and we haven't certainly seen that much improvement in outcomes. So most problems in education come down more to instruction practices and a lack of transparency than a lack of funding.
Are some of these instruction problems coming from us not paying teachers enough money?
That's kind of a complicated question because it wraps up a lot of assumptions. First of all, where are these teachers located? What is the supply and demand for teachers there? Are we accounting for the fact that most teachers work 9 months of the year rather than 12? Are we counting benefits and future pension benefits, which come to about 45% of a teacher's annual salary? I believe there are certain subjects and specialties that certainly ought to be paid more to alleviate local shortages, but across the board pay increases are often the only option available because of union rules. So first of all, allowing differentiated pay scales based on expertise and subject matter would improve pay for more in-demand teachers. Another option is to cut administrative costs. One interesting example is the Equity Project Charter School in New York City used a co-op model to spread administrative duties, and they were able to raise pay to $125,000 for starting teachers.
Wow, that's amazing. From a policy perspective, what seems effective? Do we need to let teachers' unions have their way and control our education system?
Teachers' unions were established for a very simple reason, to advocate for the interests of their members, which includes things like pay increases, job security, and increased spending. Unfortunately, those interests don't often align and often conflict with the interests of the children they're teaching, as we've seen with returns to virtual learning and several major districts and blocking of school choice reforms. The best outcomes for students occur when their parents are deeply invested in their education and have choices in how their children are educated. We need to improve education by having greater financial transparency, emphasizing outcomes, and diminishing the role of administrators and teachers' unions in what is a very personal decision and journey.
Can you explain a little bit more about what school choice is?
Absolutely. School choice allows public education funds to follow students to the schools and services that best serve their needs. School choice is, obviously public schools, but it's also private schools or charter schools, homeschooling, and so many different options that have been recently developed. The technicalities certainly differ, but the key idea is that students don't need to be pigeonholed into their own schools, their own school districts, or the public school system at all.
It seems many people in our generation care about education, but could they be more effective in taking action on education?
Yeah, young people need to keep a few things in mind. First of all, reform is often an incremental and slow process, especially in education where there are so many vested interests in maintaining the status quo. And I think young people often don't have the patience to see reform through. Secondly, education is also a local issue, and young people often take a nationwide view and end up as spectators in their own communities. So young people, with or without children of their own, need to show up at their local school board meetings. They need to write letters to the superintendent and vote in the minor elections we forget about all too often. Our generation really cannot wait until we have our own children to start improving education.
So what are some other steps people can take to help children be in the best environment to learn?
Yeah, first of all, learning begins at home. If you're the parent or guardian of a child, you need to talk around them often, surround them with books and read to them, and foster their curiosity as best you can. Once they're ready for school, then you really need to do your research and make the best choice you can within your means. Call the schools, talk to prospective teachers, ask to watch lessons being taught, and ask to see curriculum. You could even consider homeschooling or attending a charter or private school if that's within your means. Your state might have vouchers that offset the costs.
That's great. Well, Sarah, thank you for bringing some more light to this topic, and also thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of Alternative Future. I'm Cooper Conway, and we'll see you next time.